and welcome back to 31 Days of Craft-O-Ween. Today I have got a scrap busting project for all of my sewing friends out there. We're going to use a wire form for a wreath and take all of our leftover scraps and make a wreath out of them. This is a project that I have seen on Pinterest before and I have always wanted to try it, but I've never done it. This year I made a lot of masks and other projects, and so I had a lot of scraps left over. My drawers of scraps are just overflowing. So I knew it was time to come up with some kind of project to bust these scraps. So today I'm going to make a wreath with all of my Halloween and orange and black scraps. So to start off with, I have of course got this wreath form. This has got 3 sections to it. I bought this at the dollar store. It came in a pack of two of them for $1. As you can see, it's not a particularly large wire form. You can buy them at the craft store in all kinds of different sizes and shapes, but this is the first time I'm making one, so I wanted to start out with something pretty simple. So for the fabrics, I'm using mostly quilting cotton here. And you're going to want to lay out your fabrics into different color piles and maybe organize them by size. So I have some scraps here that are pretty much exactly what I need to get started with. They're already cut into a nice little strip and they're not terribly long. I might cut this one into 2, I'm not sure. Once I start kind of tying them on, I'll be able to gauge exactly what I want. But I have some that are already pretty much cut out and ready to go. Then I also have some scraps that are just really strange shapes. This one in particular I made a mask out of. You can see the rounded edge there. So I'm going to need to cut this one into a shape that will work well on my wreath. And I need to make, some kind of rectangle type shape. And then I've also got some pieces, when I started digging through my scraps, that I found to be actually pretty big. I'm not sure I even qualify them as scraps, but, larger pieces that were left over. And so I'm keeping my larger pieces in a separate pile, and I'll only dig into my large pieces if I find I don't have enough to fill my wreath with the smaller pieces. Because remember, this is a scrap busting project, and something that big is really not a scrap. You can make a whole project out of that or use it in a bigger project. So there are also some pieces, this is a scrap busting project, but there are going to be some scraps that you're just not going to want to use. For example, this piece right here, most of it is selvage. You can see right here that white stripe on the edge, and there's a little bit of my Halloween on there, but it's mostly selvage. I really don't want to put this on my wreath. They're going to be packed pretty tightly together, so that's a personal call for you. If you don't mind putting the selvages on there, that's a perfectly fine way to use them up. I, however, am just going to put this one in my trash bin. So then I've also got some pieces that are sort of strange shapes. It's really skinny in the middle here, it's kind of fat on the ends, and it's not really big. So I'm going to put this back into my scrap bin, because what this would be good for is I could cut this into 2 little triangles right here, and this might be a great piece for an applique. Sometimes I like to do little applique shirts and things, and this might be a great piece to use as a carrot on a snowman's nose or something like that. Also, if you are a crumb quilter, crumb quilters use every last little bit of fabric, and they make really intricate designs with tiny pieces of fabric. If you're a crumb quilter, just hang on to these for your crumbs. But I think if you're a crumb quilter, you probably don't have a scrap problem to begin with. So I'm just going to set this one aside, and it'll go back in my scrap bin as well. And there are some pieces that you're just going to kind of have to make a judgment call on. This one, there'll probably be some bits I use maybe, but I have a lot of black scrap, so I'm not sure that this one's even worth hanging on to. I'll make a decision on this one later. Now when you're cutting your strips into usable pieces, you have a couple of different options. You can use your standard fabric scissors. Don't cut paper with these, children. You can use your rotary cutter. Dangerous, but awesome. And then you can also use pinking shears. Now pinking shears, make a pattern on your fabric, sort of a zigzag pattern, which most of you, if you're watching this and you have fabric scraps, probably know what pinking shears do, but for any newbies out there, you get this lovely pattern on there. And what it does is it helps keep the fabric from fraying. So if you did not want your scraps to fray too much on your wreath, you could use pinking shears to cut along the edges of your pieces. Or if you just like the way that that looks, the zigzag pattern of the pinking shears, that's an option too. Personally, I like the fraying for a Halloween wreath. I think it makes it a little more spooky and gives it kind of a rustic, rough feel. So I'm going to leave the frayed edges on mine, and I'm going to put my pinking shears away for now. And the other thing, if you're using a rotary cutter, you're probably also going to want something with a straight edge so you don't take your finger off. Also, we're going to be putting these into strips, so you're going to want to be able to kind of roughly measure them out if you want to, but it's not necessary. These strips are going to be squunched up onto your wreath, and so if they're not exactly perfect, nobody's going to know. It does not matter. This is why we're doing this, busting up those scraps. Another thing you might want to use in your scrap wreath is scrap ribbon. I've got some orange and black Halloween ribbon here that I can cut into smaller pieces and put here and there on my wreath. I also have some spider ribbon left on this roll that used to have a couple other pieces on it. So this is a great way to use up those pieces that you don't really have another project for. So here on my wreath form, I have already tied on one little piece of ghost fabric. It was not a terribly large piece, but I've got it tied on there. You can see I've left my little frayed edge intact right there. And so I'm just going to go ahead and start doing some more pieces all the way around. Now you're going to want to pay attention to your colors. I've got things that are mostly black, I've got things that are orange, and then I've got a small pile that's white. So I want to kind of alternate these colors. Most of what I have is in this black pile, so I'm going to try to do maybe black with pattern and then solid black, or mix it up in there somehow. But that's my plan. So let's see how it goes. Alright, so first I've got my little ghost on here from my black pile. So maybe the next thing I'll do is a little bit of orange. So let's see, do I have anything already cut into a nice little strip? I don't. So let's make a nice little strip here. These two scraps right here are actually parts from a mask that I cut out, and I kind of messed up when I was cutting, so I just threw it in the scrap bin. And I am going to use, actually I think I'm going to use my rotary cutter and just make some strips here. And I'm not really measuring, I'm just kind of eyeballing here. Alright, some of these I'll keep, some of these I won't. Just going to tie it on next to my little ghost piece. And don't worry if they're not all the same. When you get to the end of this project, you can kind of trim them all up so that they match. Alright, so there I've got my orange piece next to my ghost piece. It's not very impressive right now, but let me get a few more pieces on there and I'll show you. Alright, so I've made some progress on my wreath here, and I'm just going to kind of show you. This is the front, and this is the back view. You can see the little knots I've made on there. And I have been alternating my colors, black, white, and orange. But in addition to alternating my colors, I've also been alternating between solids and patterns to kind of give a little more interest, but also to make sure I'm not constantly repeating the same scraps over and over again. For example, I have some solid orange, and I also have this orange with the pumpkins. And for my white, I have this sort of white and gray pattern, and then I have solid white. So I've been kind of alternating back and forth, and I think it gives a little more for the eye to look at, and I think it blends all the different colors together a little more beautifully as well. Now, in order to complete this wreath, all I have to do is continue making my knots all the way around each of the 3 sections here. Pretty easy, right? And then once you've covered all of the 3 sections, just add a ribbon to the top and hang it up on your door, your window, wherever it is you want to decorate with. Here's my finished wreath. I hope that you enjoyed this scrap busting tutorial. Join me again tomorrow for another episode of 31 Days of Craft-O-Ween. Thanks, bye-bye.